But first, tech companies are taking the lead in suppressing any voices that dissent against the left. In the past few days, Apple, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and other companies have all banned Alex Jones from using their platforms. Also, Twitter purged various libertarian accounts. Instagram temporarily banned Tommy Robinson. Facebook took down a GOP candidate's ads for allegedly being offensive. And Democratic Senator Chris Murphy says mass censorship is needed to ensure, quote, the survival of the democracy, end quote. I guess he doesn't realize the irony there. Who's next? Well, on MSNBC, some say Twitter should ban the president.
Trump has insulted someone via Twitter at least 487 times. Is there a point in which Twitter says this is a violation of our ethics, we're going to shut you down?
I think there probably is a Rubicon he could cross, but he hasn't crossed it yet, for Twitter at least.
Well, let's have this conversation now. Nigel Farage once led the UK Independent Party and spearheaded the Brexit campaign. He joins us now. Nigel, thanks for coming up with us.
Thank you.
Look, obviously, here's the issue. This is nothing new, right? We've seen this happening for quite some time. Even Diamond and Silk is a very good example on Facebook. But you've got an op-ed in USA Today, and you've got a very interesting idea about perhaps how we can start to approach this kind of banning and this assault on conservative ideas on social media. What do you have to say?
Yeah, I mean, look, Mark Zuckerberg has always claimed that Facebook was a platform for all ideas. Fine. In doing that, he says, I'm not a publisher. I'm just a means of people putting out their messages. Whatever you think of Alex Jones and InfoWars, and, you may say, hey, this guy's a bit out there. The point is, he's got a big following. He has an opinion. And if you believe in free speech, if you believe in your First Amendment rights, people should be allowed to do this. I would say that by banning Jones, by shadow banning many others, Facebook and others are now effectively becoming a publisher, and that means, because they're taking editorial decisions, they should be open to being sued as other media organizations are.
Now, I would argue, because, look, we're all looking at how to find some balance here, because we do clearly see it's unfair. We see ranging from congressmen being shadow banned to celebrities who have the wrong opinions, might be somewhat conservative, that we're trying to find a framework, especially with mainstream media being 85% liberal, and we see that push. But we're the content in social media, which gives us an edge. But let me suggest, though, that some of the argument by Twitter and what they're doing is they're saying that these comments violate their standards. And if we open it up to, let's say, lawsuits for libel, wouldn't it make it even more difficult to have speech? Wouldn't more people be banned? Wouldn't there be more people suspended?
No, because if you're a platform for all ideas, you are not a publisher. That is the point. And what Zuckerberg and the other tech giants are trying to do is they're now trying to have it both ways. On the one hand, they claim, we're not publishers, we're not open to libel because we let everybody give their opinion. But on the other, they now, in a very sinister way, are starting to ban and shadow ban people. I mean, take, for example, on Facebook, PragerU, an organisation that I've spoken for. I've been to their events. These are not.
They do great work.
They do amazing work. Yeah. I mean, their videos have been seen by tens of millions of people. They now, on Facebook, have 88 of their videos that are now very much put to the back of the list. They're very hard to access, including ones on Christianity, for goodness sake. Yeah. So we've gone way beyond the bounds. What is needed now is a Bill of Rights for people using the internet. Let's give people access, let's give people rights, and if we can't get that, let's make sure we now redefine Facebook, YouTube and Twitter as publishers who are liable, as are Fox News or the Wall Street Journal or anybody else, to the content they put out.
Yeah, look, again, we've got to find a way to push back. And one of the strengths we have here is that we are the content, right? And there's a sense also that we're willing to put up with anything because our lives now, Nigel, are so intertwined, right? With Twitter, with Facebook, social media in general. Yeah. It is the new modern way to communicate. And my concern, of course, is that if we don't want them to go go away, and yet, ironically, they're private public companies. They're not a government. They can do as they please. But I think the power is, as an example, this conversation, our being able to have a point of view and make sure everybody knows exactly what's going on, because since we are the content, we can at least push back and make a difference there. Nigel, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate it. Great job. Now, look, we've got to find some way to be able to push back. Harmeet Dillon is the perfect person to speak with about this tonight as well. She is a civil rights attorney. She represents James Damore, who was fired by Google for his personal views. She joins us now. Harmeet, welcome aboard.
Thanks, Tammy. Happy to be here.
Now, so what do you think of Nigel's proposal about holding social media accountable as publishers to where they'd be liable on issues like defamation, et cetera? I feel that would be even more chilling, because they're not the government, obviously. They're not compelled by the First Amendment to not act or to protect our rights. What's your take on how conservatives can protect themselves and push back in this regard?
Well, I actually agree with Nigel. Sorry, Tammy. I think that it is way past time for us to do that. And what Nigel is talking about is that these social media companies are all hiding behind the Communications Decency Act, Section 230, which gives them safe harbor, gives them immunity from being sued if they act as a if they act as a platform, not as a publisher. Right. The minute they become a publisher and censor what they do and what they don't, just like a magazine, just like Newsweek or whatever, they can be held liable just like those publications. Now, what these social media platforms have done is they have absolutely, with their digital advertising, sucked the life out of traditional journalism, so that, you know, the traditional journalism outlets are on their last legs. They're teetering into extinction. And they're the places where they actually can get sued. If they do defamation, if they publish libel, they can be held liable, but these other platforms cannot. So between their market power, which I think is something that the DOJ should look at with antitrust regulation, and with their, frankly, false advertising to being open to everybody, which Twitter promises, Facebook promises, and you know, YouTube to a certain degree promises, although they don't pretend to do that anymore. They're violating the law. And so, you know, setting aside the First Amendment, I agree with you. This is not a First Amendment issue so much as a breach of contract, an issue involving other regulations. Some of the other things that conservatives can do is that we need to have members of Congress look at this Communications Decency Act issue, pass legislation. But we already have some government regulations in place that could help us. We have the Federal Trade Commission. We have the Federal Communications Commission. They could both take a hand in looking at the uneven application of the rules to these different
but Harmeet, you know, I get very nervous. I'm not a libertarian. I'm not even a Republican. But when we start seeing, and I think regulations can be very good. You know, we've seen that when it comes to the environment, that government does have a role, but albeit a very limited one. When we start talking about government agencies deciding who has to be heard and what must be done, I start thinking of things like the Fairness Doctrine, which made talk radio impossible to have. I worry about, again, this notion that when you're dealing with private/public companies, but they're not the government at the same time, Google had a very big role in government involved with Barack Obama's administration. They themselves, the market share, the value of them are bigger than some countries. I mean, Apple just, I think, became like the first time the $1 trillion traded company. Are you not concerned about government involvement in this marketplace framework where I think personal activism as the content producers can help make the difference on?
Well, of course I'm concerned, and frankly, government involvement as a conservative is the last resort, but sometimes it is necessary. So, for example, where we have doctrines that require equal access to certain platforms, you know, for example, you have Facebook censoring Elizabeth Heng's ads when the incumbent's not censored. That is, to me, virtually an in-kind contribution by the platform to one side over the other. We can't have that in our system under our current laws. I'm not saying new laws. I'm just saying apply the current laws to the situation. So there's that. The other thing is that you know, conservatives can fight back in the courts, or as you say, we're the content. But you know, I'm afraid it's a little naive to say that. Unfortunately, we've had many years of American consumers acting like sheep. You know, they think that Google is free, these things are free, and now we're in chains.
Well,
now they control our voices.
We have to wrap it up now. I think this conversation is an indicator that things are changing, and thank goodness for work like yours, Harmeet. I appreciate you joining us tonight.